The Mongol Empire, one of the largest empires within history. At its height, the Mongol Empire spanned across Asia and into Europe. But how did the Mongols establish such a massive and expansive empire? How are a once small group of nomadic tribes able to form into the massive empire studied today? These questions can be answered through two aspects of Mongol warfare: equipment and tactics. More specifically, Mongol armor and weaponry were two components of Mongol warfare that played a crucial role in the establishment of the Mongol Empire. Additionally, Fabian tactics and the feigned retreat were two tactics which greatly contributed to the success at war. Mobility and intelligence were also key characteristics of the Mongols as well, and their equipment and tactics reflect the emphasis that the Mongols placed on these characteristics. This documentary will focus on the pre-dissolution period. This period begins in the year 1200 and ends in the year 1260. During this period, we see the Mongol Empire at its height just before civil war. We also see the expansion of the empire under Genghis Khan, Ogadai, Mongke, Hulagu, and Kublai. The end of the period marked a change in Mongol warfare that was not as effective as what can be seen during this period. One of the most important aspects of Mongol warfare was mobility. The majority of the Mongol force comprised of horse-mounted archers, and as such, mobility was one of the key strengths of this mounted force. The emphasis on mobility can be seen in their equipment and tactics, as it was a major factor in Mongol warfare. Was one piece of equipment that was vital in Mongol warfare. The Mongols preferred lamlar armor due to its increased protection against arrows compared to chainmail. Lamlar armor was typically made out of iron and was bound together by leather. Lamlar armor was also much more effective against arrows compared to chainmail armor. John Plainville de Carpini, in his description of the Mongols, wrote about Mongol lamlar armor and wrote that it should be incorporated into European armies. Additionally, lamlar armor was much easier to construct compared to chainmail. The Mongols wore a simple helmet that resembled an upside-down acorn and was often made of either iron or bronze. However, the Mongols did not always wear armor in battle. Sometimes they simply wore a knee-length coat called a deel. While the deel provided less protection to that of lamlar armor, what it lacked in protection, it made up in mobility. The absence of iron and leather significantly improved the mobility of the Mongols due to the decrease in weight. However, even while wearing armor, the Mongols were extremely mobile and lightweight compared to other armies at the time. This level of mobility, as will be discussed, played an important role in the successful execution of Mongol tactics and in the success of the army as a whole. Following armor comes the most important piece of Mongol equipment, the composite bow. This bow was made primarily out of horn, wood, sinew, and glue, with arrow tips made out of iron, steel, horn, or bone, which were effective in piercing armored targets. Unlike the Welsh longbow or the crossbow, the composite bow was much smaller. This smaller size allows for the bow to be shot while on horseback. The Mongols were able to shoot and reload their bows, all while maintaining control of their horse. Effective use of the composite bow allowed the Mongols to wreak havoc on their enemies. Additionally, the Mongols used a thumb ring in order to pull the bowstring, which made it much easier to draw the bow. This allowed for prolonged periods of fire. Overall, the Mongol composite bow was an integral weapon that the Mongols utilized to great success. While the composite bow was not the only weapon used by the Mongols, it was their primary weapon, with which they were extremely effective. Its lightweight and fast draw speeds allowed for it to be used on horseback, and Mongol tactics utilized this to its maximum ability. Intelligence gathering, training, and organization played a key role in Mongol warfare. Intelligence was crucial, and before a campaign would even occur, Mongols met at the Kuriltai, where they would discuss military and political actions. Additionally, the Mongols utilized scouts, which would decide if a battlefield was favorable or not. Organization and training were also key, as the two tactics require a lot of training and organization to successfully pull off. This leads into the first primary Mongol tactic of war, the use of Fabian tactics. Fabian tactics are a style of tactics where large-scale combat is avoided, and instead, small-scale attacks and harassments are utilized to weaken enemy morale and inflict casualties. The Mongols often avoided combat with the enemy until their scouts found a location that was favorable to them. Fabian tactics demonstrate the role that intelligence gathering played in their style of warfare. Additionally, the Mongols divided their force into smaller spread out groups, which prevented them from being surrounded. They would then regroup and launch a surprise attack. Fabian tactics also demonstrate the need for mobility, strict training, and organization, as the Mongols needed to be fast and well trained in order to execute these tactics successfully. Successful use of these tactics allowed for the Mongols to defeat the traditional tactics of combat used by their enemies. Overall, Fabian tactics placed an emphasis on mobility, training, organization, and intelligence gathering. It is due to the Mongols' effective use of Fabian tactics that contributed to their success in war.
The feigned retreat was another major Mongol tactic. It consisted of faking retreat, which entices the enemy to chase after the Mongols. They would then meet up with an allied force waiting in the distance. The retreating force would then turn around and attack the enemy head-on with the support of the reserve force. During the feigned retreat, the Mongols would turn around on their horse and fire arrows at the enemy. This is known as the Parthian shot. Both tactics require a high degree of mobility and organization to successfully use. In the year 1223 at the Kalka River, these tactics led to great success for the Mongols. Mongol generals Subadai and Jabei successfully wiped out a combined force of Turks and Rus by using the feigned retreat to lure the enemy into an awaiting Mongol force. In conclusion, Mongol equipment and tactics were two major components of warfare. Their equipment and tactics reflect the importance of mobility and organization. It was their effective use of their equipment and tactics that allowed for the Mongols to create such a vast empire.